Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar, watching the emergency signal flash red across his main screen. The message came from Admiral Lisa Kane, and her voice shook with fear as she spoke through the static noise. Morrison had never heard the Admiral sound scared before, and that worried him more than anything else could. "All ships in range must come to Grid 77 Alpha right now," the Admiral said in the recording. "We are fighting an enemy we have never seen before, and they are destroying everything we send at them. Our weapons barely scratch their ships while they cut through our defenses like they are made of paper. We need help immediately or Earth will fall." The transmission cut off and Morrison felt his blood run cold. The Terran Defense Fleet was the strongest military force humanity had ever built, and if they were losing this badly, then Earth was in real trouble. The Blackstar had been out in deep space for 8 months testing new weapons and systems far away from the core worlds. They were alone out here, and 3 days away from the battle at maximum speed. Commander Alex Murphy turned from his tactical station with worry written all over his face. "Captain, we are too far away. By the time we get there, the battle will be over and Earth might already be under attack." Morrison looked at the star charts showing their position relative to the fighting. 3 days was a long time in space combat, and the Admiral had sounded desperate. "We might be the only ship left that can help them, Alex. We have to try." Lieutenant Helen Brooks worked at her intelligence station, pulling up everything they had on this new enemy. The aliens called themselves the Vraktar Dominion, and they had been moving through space conquering every system they found. What made them so dangerous was not just their powerful ships but the way they fought. They never left any survivors behind to warn other worlds about their weapons and tactics. "Captain, I am reading reports from 3 different star systems that were attacked in the past 6 months," Helen said while scrolling through the data. "Each time the Vraktar arrive with massive fleets and destroy everything. They take no prisoners and leave no witnesses. The only reason we know about them is from automated distress, beacons that manage to send messages before being destroyed." Chief Engineer Pete Collins came up from the lower decks with grease on his uniform and sweat on his face. The ship had been running at high speed for hours already, and the engines were getting hot. "Captain, the new fusion drives are holding steady, but if we push them past the red line for 3 straight days, they might burn out. We could lose power completely." Morrison did not hesitate. "Do it, Pete. Push the engines as hard as they will go. Ready all our experimental weapons and run full diagnostics on every system. If we are going into this fight, we need to know exactly what we can do." The Blackstar was not like other ships in the fleet. It had been built as a test platform for new human technology, including quantum torpedoes that could phase through enemy shields and adaptive armor that could change its properties during battle. The ship also carried an advanced artificial intelligence called Athena that could process battlefield information faster than any human mind. The ship jumped to maximum speed. Morrison called his senior staff together in the briefing room. The walls showed tactical displays of what they knew about the Vraktar ships and their weapons. The alien vessels looked more grown than built, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with life. "These ships adapt to whatever attacks them," Lieutenant Commander Rick Hayes said while studying the weapons data. "Every time our forces hit them with the same weapon twice, the damage gets less and less. They learn from each attack and change their defenses accordingly." Dr. Amy Foster leaned forward to look at the biological scans. "Captain, these are not just ships. They appear to be living creatures that have been modified for war. Look at how they move in perfect coordination with each other. It is like they share a single mind across the entire fleet." Morrison absorbed all this information while planning their approach. One ship against an entire alien armada seemed impossible, but the Blackstar had advantages no other human vessel possessed. Their stealth systems could make them nearly invisible, and their experimental weapons had never been used in real combat before. "The key will be surprise," Morrison told his crew. "They have never faced our technology before, so they will not know how to adapt to it immediately. We hit them hard and fast before they can figure out how to defend against our weapons." Commander Sarah Blake reviewed the tactical options available to them. "Sir, even with our advantages, we are still just one ship. The reports indicate Vraktar fleets contain dozens of vessels, including massive dreadnoughts that are bigger than anything we have ever built." Morrison stood up and looked at each of his officers in turn. These people had volunteered for a dangerous mission testing experimental technology, far from home, and now they faced an enemy that had never been defeated. "I will not lie to you. This will probably be a one-way trip, but if we do not try, then Earth falls and humanity ends. Are you with me? Every person in the room nodded without hesitation. They had sworn an oath to protect Earth and her colonies, and they would honor that oath even if it meant their deaths. Morrison felt proud to serve with such brave people, and hoped their sacrifice would not be in vain. The next 3 days passed quickly as the crew prepared for battle. Engineers worked around the clock to optimize every system, while weapons officers ran countless simulations. Dr. Foster studied every piece of data about Fractar biology, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. Everyone on the ship knew they were racing toward what might be the most important battle in human history. On the final day, Athena announced they were approaching the battle zone. "Captain, we will drop out of hyperspace in 1 hour. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures consistent with large-scale fleet combat." Morrison returned to the bridge and took his captain's chair. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency despite the fear they all felt. They had done everything possible to prepare, and now it was time to see if human courage and ingenuity could overcome impossible odds. "All hands battle stations," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "This is what we trained for, people. Today we find out what humanity is really made of." The USS Blackstar dropped out of hyperspace into a scene that would haunt Jake Morrison for the rest of his life. Pieces of human ships floated everywhere like a massive graveyard in space. Twisted metal and debris from hundreds of vessels drifted slowly in the darkness, while emergency beacons blinked their final distress calls into the void. Morrison had seen battle damage before, but nothing like this total destruction. "Dear God," whispered Ensign Danny Wright from his communication station as he stared at the tactical display. The young officer had never seen real combat, and the sight of so much death left him pale and shaking. "How many ships were destroyed here?" Commander Sarah Blake worked at her station counting the debris signatures while her face grew grim. "Sir, I am reading the remains of at least 200 vessels, including Admiral Kane's flagship, the USS Titan. The entire Third Fleet appears to have been wiped out along with most of the Second and Fifth Fleets." Morrison felt sick as he realized the scope of the disaster. Those fleets represented over 40,000 crew members, and their families back on Earth would never see them again. The best and brightest of humanity's military had died here trying to protect their homeworld from an enemy they could not defeat. Moving through the wreckage like sharks were the alien ships responsible for this massacre. The Fractar vessels looked nothing like human designs, with their organic curves and surfaces that seemed to breathe. Green light pulsed along their hulls in patterns that reminded Morrison of blood flowing through veins. The ships moved with fluid grace as they searched through the debris looking for anything useful. "Captain, I am counting 47 enemy vessels, including 12 of their largest dreadnoughts," Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported from his weapons station. "The biggest ones are 3 times the size of our heaviest cruisers, and they all appear to be connected by some kind of energy network." Dr. Foster studied the sensor readings with fascination mixed with horror. "Look at how they coordinate their movements. Every ship responds to changes in formation at exactly the same time, as if they were all controlled by a single brain. This is not just advanced technology, Captain. This is evolution." The alien ships were preparing to leave the battle zone, and Morrison realized with growing dread what that meant. "They are getting ready to jump to Earth. Athena, how long until they can reach our home system?" The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately in her calm female voice. "Based on observed Fractar hyperspace capabilities, the enemy fleet could reach Earth in approximately 14 hours. Captain, 14 hours was not much time for Earth's remaining defenses to prepare for an attack by ships that had just destroyed the entire Terran defense fleet." Morrison knew there were some orbital platforms and a few patrol ships around Earth, but nothing that could stop this armada. Humanity's last hope was floating here in space, watching their enemies prepare for the final assault. "Sir, we should transmit everything we know about these ships back to Earth," suggested Commander Blake. "Even if we cannot stop them, maybe our data will help the home fleet prepare better." "Defenses." Morrison nodded and ordered the transmission sent, but he knew it would not be enough. The Fractar had crushed humanity's best ships and weapons with apparent ease. What could a few orbital defense platforms do against enemies that adapted to every attack? Still, he had to try something, even if the odds were hopeless. Murphy began a detailed scan of their fleet formation and upload everything to Earth Command, Morrison ordered. I want them to know exactly what is coming their way. As the crew worked, Morrison studied the tactical situation, looking for any possible advantage. The Blackstar was hidden in the debris field using their experimental stealth systems, but they could not stay hidden forever. Once they attacked, the entire enemy fleet would focus on destroying them, and one ship could not survive that kind of firepower. Dr. Foster continued analyzing the biological aspects of the enemy ships while Lieutenant Brooks tried to intercept their communications. Captain, I am detecting massive data transfers between the alien vessels. They appear to be sharing information about our weapons and tactics. Every ship in their fleet now knows exactly how we fight. This was the most terrifying aspect of fighting the Vraktar. They learned from every encounter and shared that knowledge instantly across their entire species. Humanity's weapons and tactics were no longer secret, and the aliens had already developed countermeasures for everything they had seen. We need to hit them with something they have never encountered before, Morrison said while reviewing their experimental weapons inventory. The quantum torpedoes are completely new technology. They might not be able to adapt to them immediately. Chief Collins came onto the bridge with a grim expression. Captain, I have been monitoring the alien power signatures, and their energy output is incredible. Each of their dreadnoughts generates more power than our entire space station network. We are seriously outgunned here. Morrison knew his chief engineer was right, but giving up was not an option. Somewhere in that debris field were the escape pods and emergency shelters of human survivors waiting for rescue. Admiral Kane might still be alive, along with thousands of other crew members who had managed to abandon ship before their vessels were destroyed. Athena scanned the debris field for life signs. Morrison commanded, I want to know if anyone survived this massacre. The artificial intelligence took several minutes to complete the scan, while examining every piece of floating wreckage. Captain, I am detecting weak life support signatures from 17 escape pods and 4 heavily damaged ships. The vessels USS Denver, USS Phoenix, USS Ranger, and USS Liberty appear to have surviving crew members aboard. Morrison felt a surge of hope. If those ships were still operational, they might have enough firepower to make a difference in the coming battle. 4 ships plus the Blackstar against 47 alien vessels was still hopeless odds, but at least they would not be fighting alone. Wright, try to establish communication with those ships, Morrison ordered. Let them know help has arrived. While his communications officer worked, Morrison continued studying the enemy formation. The Vraktar ships were arranged in a complex pattern, with the largest dreadnoughts at the center surrounded by smaller escorts. Energy beams connected many of the vessels, suggesting they shared power and information through direct links. Captain, I have contact with the surviving ships, Wright reported. They are requesting immediate assistance. With medical emergencies and structural damage, Morrison wanted to help the survivors immediately, but he knew any rescue attempt would reveal their position to the aliens. Once the Vraktar detected them, the battle would begin, and it might be their only chance to strike first. The lives of a few hundred survivors had to be weighed against Earth's survival. Tell them to hold position and prepare for combat operations, Morrison decided. We are going to hit these aliens before they can jump to Earth. Commander Blake looked at him with concern. Sir, are you planning to attack their entire fleet with just 5 ships? Morrison stood up from his captain's chair and looked at the tactical display showing the massive alien armada. Sarah, we might be the last hope Earth has. If we do not try here, then billions of people will die when these ships reach our home system. Sometimes you have to fight even when you cannot win. Captain Morrison gave the order to attack, and the USS Blackstar emerged from the debris field like a predator striking from the shadows. The ship's experimental stealth systems had kept them hidden among the wreckage, but now they dropped their camouflage and accelerated toward the alien fleet at maximum speed. Morrison had chosen their first target carefully after studying the enemy formation for hours. Target acquired, Lieutenant Hayes announced from his weapons station. Vraktar destroyer on the outer edge of their formation. Range closing to optimal firing distance. Morrison watched the tactical display as they approached the alien ship. The destroyer was smaller than their dreadnoughts, but still twice the size of the Blackstar, with a hull that seemed to pulse with organic life. Strange tentacle-like appendages extended from its sides while bioluminescent patterns flowed across its surface like neural pathways. Fire quantum torpedoes full spread, Morrison commanded without hesitation. The Blackstar's experimental weapons launched in brilliant streams of blue energy, that seemed to bend space itself as they traveled toward their target. The quantum torpedoes were humanity's newest technology, and they worked by phasing through normal matter before exploding inside enemy ships. No alien species had ever encountered weapons like these before. The torpedoes struck the Blackstar destroyer and passed through its adaptive shields as if they did not exist. The explosions came from inside the ship's hull, and the results were devastating. The destroyer did not just take damage or catch fire like a normal ship would. Instead, it seemed to dissolve as its molecular structure came apart at the quantum level, leaving only glowing particles drifting in space. For a moment, the alien fleet seemed stunned by what had happened. Morrison had hoped the complete destruction of one of their ships would confuse them, and buy precious seconds for the next attack. But the Blackstar recovered quickly, and their response was both swift and terrifying. Every ship in the alien fleet turned toward the Blackstar as targeting systems locked onto their position. The organic hulls began to shift and change as they adapted to this new threat. Biomechanical tentacles emerged from the larger ships and reached out through space like searching fingers trying to grab their attacker. "They are adapting," Dr. Foster reported with fear and fascination in her voice. "Look at how their hull composition is changing. They are already developing defenses against our quantum weapons." Commander Blake coordinated the ship's evasive maneuvers as green energy bolts began filling the space around them. "All hands brace for impact. They are firing everything they have at us." The Blackstar twisted and dove through space in patterns that seemed impossible for such a large vessel. Captain Morrison had spent months training his crew in unconventional tactics, and now their lives depended on that preparation. The ship's advanced maneuvering systems allowed them to change direction instantly, while maintaining high speed. Alien weapons fire streaked past them in brilliant displays of green and purple energy. Some of the shots came close enough to overload their shields, but the Blackstar's experimental defensive systems held against the assault. Morrison knew they could not keep dodging forever, though. The aliens had too many ships and too much firepower. "Second target acquired," Hayes called out. The command dreadnought at the center of their formation. Morrison had identified the command ship during their initial reconnaissance. It was the largest vessel in the alien fleet, and appeared to coordinate all the others through some kind of biological network. If they could destroy it, the enemy fleet might lose their coordination advantage. "Athena, analyze their command structure and find me the best target point," Morrison ordered. The artificial intelligence processed the sensor data in milliseconds before responding. "Captain, the central dreadnought controls fleet movements through bioelectric impulses, transmitted from neural clusters on its upper hull. Recommend targeting the primary neural junction located amidships." Lieutenant Hayes locked onto the target as the Blackstar continued its wild, evasive dance through alien weapons fire. The command ship was heavily protected by escort vessels and its own adaptive defenses, but Morrison knew they had to try. Taking out the enemy's coordination might be their only chance. "Fire everything we have," Morrison commanded. The Blackstar unleashed its full arsenal at once. Quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, and experimental disruptor beams all converged on the command ship's neural junction. The alien vessel's living armor writhed and shifted as it tried to adapt to the variety of weapons being used against it. The biomechanical hull changed color and texture, while defensive tentacles reached out to intercept the incoming fire. Some of the weapons were stopped by the ship's adaptive defenses, but others got through. The quantum torpedoes phased inside the hull, while plasma bolts burned through sections that had not yet adapted to their frequency. The disruptor beams tore at the ship's neural pathways, disrupting the biological processes that controlled the fleet. The command ship shuddered under the assault, and Morrison watched with satisfaction as explosions rippled across its hull. But the massive vessel did not die easily. Emergency repair systems began working immediately to fix the damage, while backup neural clusters took over command functions. "Target is damaged but still operational," Hayes reported. "Their adaptive systems are working to repair the neural junction." Morrison cursed under his breath. They had hit the enemy hard, but it was not enough to destroy their command ship. Meanwhile, the rest of the alien fleet was closing in on their position, and the Blackstar could not survive concentrated fire from so many vessels. "Sir, we need to break off the attack," Commander Blake warned. "They are forming an encirclement pattern around us." But as Morrison prepared to order a tactical withdrawal, something unexpected happened. The alien fleet's perfect coordination began to break down. Individual ships started responding more slowly to formation changes while others seemed confused about their targeting priorities. The damage to the command ship was affecting their entire network. Captain, I am detecting communication disruptions throughout their fleet, Wright announced. The command ship is having trouble maintaining its control links. Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. All ships converge on our position, he ordered over the communications channel. We are going to hit them while they are confused. The 4 surviving human ships emerged from their hiding places in the debris field and accelerated toward the Blackstar's position. The USS Denver led the charge, followed by the Phoenix, Ranger, and Liberty. All 4 vessels showed battle damage, but their weapons were still operational, and their crews were eager for revenge. Captain Roy Bennett's voice came over the communications channel from the Denver. Blackstar, this is Denver. We saw what you did to their command ship. Tell us how we can help finish the job. Morrison smiled as he watched the small human fleet form up around his ship. They were still outnumbered 10-1, but the aliens had lost their coordination advantage. Now it was time to see if human determination could overcome superior technology and numbers. The real battle was just beginning. The 5 human ships formed a tight battle formation as they faced the confused alien fleet. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to coordinate with the other surviving vessels, and could see the determination on every face, despite the overwhelming odds they faced. These crews had watched their friends and comrades die in the earlier battle, and now they wanted revenge. This is Captain Lisa Cruz of the USS Phoenix, came the first response. Her uniform was torn and her face was streaked with soot, but her eyes burned with fierce resolve. After what these monsters did to our fleet, we are ready to follow you into hell itself. Captain Roy Bennett of the Denver nodded grimly. My ship is down to 40% power, but our weapons are still operational. Just tell us what you need us to do. Morrison quickly outlined his plan to the other captains. The Vraktar were adapting to their weapons, but human ingenuity had always been about more than just technology. It was about unpredictability and creativity, and the refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. We are going to hit them with everything at once, but in a coordinated pattern, Morrison explained. Different weapon frequencies at different targets with different attack patterns. We will make them adapt to so many variables simultaneously that their biological systems overload. Chief Collins had been monitoring the alien ships from his engineering station and made an important discovery. Captain, I am detecting something interesting about their adaptive capabilities. When they change their defenses to resist one type of weapon, they become more vulnerable to others. It appears they can only maintain a limited number of defensive configurations at the same time. Dr. Foster leaned forward excitedly as she studied the biological data. That makes perfect sense. They are living organisms, not machines. Even the most advanced biological system has limits to how quickly it can adapt to multiple threats. Morrison saw the weakness they could exploit. The aliens had evolved to face one threat at a time and adapt to it completely. But human military doctrine was based on combined arms tactics using multiple weapon types in coordinated attacks. If they could overwhelm the enemy's adaptive capabilities, they might have a chance. All right, people, here is how we do this, Morrison announced to all ships. Each vessel will target different enemy ships with different weapons at precisely timed intervals. The aliens will not be able to adapt fast enough if we keep changing our attack patterns. The human ships spread out across the battlefield as they prepared for their desperate assault. The USS Denver would use plasma cannons against the enemy's port flank, while the Phoenix targeted their starboard formation with torpedo salvos. The Ranger and Liberty would provide covering fire with particle beams and railguns, while the Blackstar continued using its experimental quantum weapons. Begin attack run in 30 seconds, Morrison commanded as the ships moved into position. Remember to keep changing targets and weapon frequencies. Do not give them time to adapt. The coordinated human attack began with devastating effect. 5 ships striking at different targets with different weapons created chaos in the alien formation. The Vraktar ships tried desperately to adapt their defenses, but every time they configured their armor to resist one weapon type, they became vulnerable to another. Morrison watched with satisfaction as alien ships began taking serious damage for the first time. Their living hulls writhed and shifted frantically as they tried to keep up with the constantly changing human attacks. Biomechanical tentacles reached out wildly, trying to intercept weapons fire while their organic armor changed color and texture in rapid sequence. Target the damaged command ship, Morrison ordered as the Blackstar made another attack run. Athena, focus our quantum torpedoes on the sections that are still trying to repair themselves. The artificial intelligence immediately complied and guided their weapons to the most vulnerable points on the alien command vessel. The quantum torpedoes phased through the ship's confused defenses and exploded inside critical systems. This time, the damage was too much for the biological repair systems to handle. The command ship died in a spectacular explosion that sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. With their central coordinator destroyed, the remaining Vraktar vessels lost all cohesion and began operating as individual units. Their perfect synchronization dissolved into chaos as each ship tried to adapt to the human attacks on its own. Their network is collapsing, Dr. Foster announced with excitement. Without the command ship, they cannot maintain their biological links. Each vessel is fighting independently now. This was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. The aliens were used to overwhelming force and perfect coordination, but they did not know how to fight as individuals. Take away their hive mind advantage and they became much less dangerous opponents. Captain Bennett's voice came over the communications channel filled with fierce joy. Look at them scatter. They do not know what to do when they cannot think as one mind. The human ships pressed their advantage as the alien formation continued to break apart. Individual Vraktar vessels tried to retreat or regroup, but the humans followed them relentlessly. Morrison had studied their previous conquests and knew their most dangerous characteristic was that they never left survivors to warn others. Do not let any of them escape, Morrison commanded. If even one ship gets away, they will return with reinforcements and Earth will face an even larger fleet. The USS Phoenix scored a direct hit on an alien destroyer that was trying to break away from the battle. Captain Cruz had timed her torpedo salvo perfectly to catch the ship, while its defenses were configured against the Ranger's particle beams. The destroyer's hull split open like a flower blooming before exploding in a brilliant flash. Meanwhile, the Denver and Liberty worked together to corner a Vraktar cruiser that was attempting to reach the edge of the battle zone. The alien ship's organic armor kept changing to resist their attacks, but it could not adapt to both plasma fire and railgun rounds simultaneously. Under the coordinated assault, its defenses finally failed. Morrison felt hope growing as he watched more alien ships fall to the human attack. Their desperate plan was actually working, and the enemy fleet was being systematically destroyed. But then Athena detected something that made his blood run cold. Captain, the remaining Vraktar vessels are attempting to charge their hyperspace drives, the artificial intelligence reported. They appear to be preparing for an emergency retreat. Morrison realized the aliens had finally accepted they could not win this battle and were trying to escape. But he could not allow that to happen, because any surviving ships would report back to their empire about human capabilities and tactics. The next Vraktar fleet would be prepared for their weapons and strategies. All ships converge on the retreating vessels, Morrison ordered. We cannot let them jump away. But as the human ships moved to intercept the fleeing aliens, Morrison made a decision that would go down in military history. He was going to do something that had never been attempted before, and follow enemy ships into hyperspace itself, to finish the battle there. Prepare for hyperspace combat operations, Morrison announced to his shocked crew. We are going to follow them into the void and end this war. The bridge of the USS Blackstar fell completely silent as Captain Morrison announced his intention to follow the alien ships into hyperspace. Fighting in that twisted realm between dimensions was theoretically possible, but practically suicidal, since the exotic energies and strange physics could tear apart even the most advanced vessels. No human had ever attempted combat operations in hyperspace before. Commander Blake was the first to find her voice. Sir, what you are suggesting is incredibly dangerous. The other ships might not be able to handle the stress of hyperspace combat with their battle damage. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the remaining Vraktar vessels as they prepared to jump away from the battle. If even one of those ships escaped, it would return with reinforcements and Earth would face an invasion fleet that knew exactly how to counter human weapons and tactics. This was their only chance to end the threat completely. Sarah, if we let them go, then everything we have fought for here means nothing, Morrison replied. They will be back with a fleet 10 times this size and next time they will be ready for us. Dr. Foster studied the hyperspace readings with growing concern. Captain, the energy fluctuations in hyperspace are extremely unpredictable. Our ships could be torn apart by dimensional storms or lost forever in the void between realities, Chief. Collins worked frantically at his engineering station trying to prepare the ship's systems for the impossible mission ahead. I am rerouting power to the hyperspace, stabilizers and reinforcing our dimensional shields, but I cannot guarantee they will hold under combat stress. Morrison knew his chief. Engineer was right, but they had come too far to turn back now. The crew of the Blackstar had volunteered for a dangerous experimental mission, and now they faced the ultimate test of their courage and technology. If humanity was going to survive, they needed to be willing to go where their enemies thought they could not follow. All ships prepare for hyperspace pursuit, Morrison commanded over the fleet communication channel. I know this is dangerous, but Earth depends on us finishing this fight. Captain Cruz of the Phoenix responded immediately despite the fear in her voice. Blackstar, we will follow your lead. Our hyperspace drives are damaged but still functional. The other captains confirmed their readiness even though Morrison could see the worry on their faces. These were brave people who had already faced impossible odds and watched their comrades die. Now they were being asked to risk everything on an untested tactic that could kill them all. The first Vraktar ships began jumping into hyperspace as their drives reached full power. Morrison watched them disappear in flashes of twisted light that seemed to bend reality itself. The aliens thought they were escaping to safety, but they were about to discover that humans would follow them. Anywhere, jump coordinates. Locked, announced Lieutenant Hayes. All weapons recalibrated for hyperspace combat operations. Morrison took a deep breath and gave the order that would make history. All ships jump. The 5 human vessels disappeared from normal space and emerged into the chaotic realm of hyperspace, where the laws of physics bent and reality became uncertain. The twisted energies of faster-than-light travel surrounded them with swirling colors that hurt to look at while dimensional. Storms raged in the distance like aurora made of pure energy. The Vraktar ships were scattered throughout the hyperspace corridor, desperately trying to reach the exit point that would take them back to normal space. But the human fleet was already among them, and the final battle began in that impossible place between dimensions. Morrison watched in amazement as the Blackstar's quantum torpedoes traveled through folded space-time to strike alien targets. The weapons seemed to twist and bend as they moved through hyperspace, before exploding with effects that were even more devastating than in normal space. The exotic energies amplified their destructive power beyond anything the designers had imagined. Target destroyed, Hayes reported as a Vraktar cruiser simply vanished from existence. The hyperspace environment is increasing our weapon efficiency by 300%. The alien ships tried to fight back, but their biomechanical systems were not designed for combat in this twisted realm. Their living hulls writhed in apparent agony as the hyperspace energies interfered with their biological processes. Many of their weapons misfired or failed completely, while their adaptive defenses became erratic and unpredictable. Captain Bennett's Denver scored multiple hits on an enemy destroyer that was trying to escape deeper into hyperspace. The plasma bolts seemed to gain power as they traveled through the dimensional storm, and when they struck the alien ship, the results were catastrophic. The destroyer's organic hull began dissolving as the hyperspace energies tore apart its molecular structure. Morrison felt a savage satisfaction as he watched the alien fleet being destroyed in the very realm they had thought would provide sanctuary. The Vraktar had conquered dozens of star systems by using overwhelming force and perfect coordination, but they had never faced an enemy willing to pursue them into hyperspace itself. Captain, I am detecting the last group of enemy ships attempting to reach the exit corridor, Athena announced. 3 vessels, including 1 heavy dreadnought. Morrison ordered all ships to converge on the fleeing aliens for the final assault. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like avenging angels pursuing their enemies to the very edge of reality. The remaining Vraktar ships were trapped between the human forces and the chaotic energies that filled this twisted realm. The final battle was brief, but decisive. The USS Liberty and USS Ranger combined their fire to destroy the 2 escort vessels, while the Blackstar and Phoenix targeted the massive dreadnought. The alien flagship tried desperately to adapt its defenses, but the hyperspace environment made its biological systems malfunction. Continuously, Morrison personally fired the final shots that destroyed the last Vraktar ship. The quantum torpedoes phased through dimensions before exploding inside the dreadnought's core systems. The massive vessel died in a brilliant flash of exotic energy that lit up the hyperspace corridor like a new star being born. As the human ships emerged, Back into normal space, Morrison ordered a complete sensor sweep of the entire system. Athena confirmed what he already knew in his heart. Every single alien vessel had been destroyed with no survivors and no escape pods. The Vraktar Dominion had suffered their first total defeat in their entire history of conquest. "Scan complete, Captain," Athena reported. "Zero enemy life signs detected. Zero functional alien technology remaining. Total Vraktar casualties 100%. Morrison stood on his bridge looking out at the debris field where 40,000 humans had died defending their homeworld. But their sacrifice had not been in vain because it had bought Earth the time needed for the Blackstar to arrive and turn the tide of battle. Ensign Wright looked up from his console with something approaching awe. "Sir, this is the first recorded instance of a Vraktar invasion force being completely eliminated. In their entire military history, they have never lost even a single ship to any enemy." Morrison nodded slowly as he absorbed the magnitude of what they had accomplished. The Vraktar would return someday with an even larger fleet, but when they did, they would face a humanity that had learned something important about itself. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans did not just fight back, they innovated and adapted, and refused to accept defeat. The USS Blackstar set course for Earth, carrying with it the recorded data of humanity's first total victory against an enemy that had seemed invincible. As Commander Blake noted in her official report when the USS Blackstar joined the fight, no foe survived to speak of it, and perhaps that was exactly the message humanity needed to send to the galaxy.